I have a confession before we get started. I spend way too much time on TikTok. I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this. It's not just the algorithm that incessantly puts content that I want to see in front of me, keeping me on my phone until late at the night, trying to understand what's going on in the world. It's not just that, although TikTok fans, I'm just curious. Anyone here on TikTok? This is going to be a fun presentation then, okay? Anyone who's like, yeah, we're banning TikTok. Anyone? Because you have teenagers. Is that right? Because you're a psychologist and you read the research and you see the mental health crisis that is created amongst our teens. I'm with you, right? There's definitely a push and pull there. The reason I like it though is because it's another data point when you're looking at sentiment analysis for employees. I don't know how many of you in this room do employee engagement, but it to me is everything. Not employee engagement, I think that term is kind of antiquated. We should let it die. Employee experience is what's important to me. I am obsessed with employee experience. When I was a student, I was building a startup out of the Harvard Innovation Labs, and we were pioneering sentiment analysis in real time. That's a fancy way of saying, I don't understand the once-a-year surveys, people. Like, I don't understand why it's like one data point, once a year, 75 questions in a survey. Are the employees even honest? Why do they roll their eyes when they take it? Like, is there trust enough in the relationship for them to actually make it work? Why does it take so long to get the data back? It's like you submit the survey, it takes 6 months to process the data. And by that point, talking about the pandemic, you're probably a different organization. It doesn't make sense. We got to do better. So we built this and sold this startup, kind of pioneering how do we collect that data every single day? How do we develop a relationship of trust with our employees? And so I'm obsessed with that. I'm obsessed with how the world views work right now. And TikTok is a perfect place to check it out. And so I look at what's going up on TikTok, what's going viral on TikTok, and I match it with stats and data. Like, is this accurate to the experience that we're seeing? And sometimes it's not quite there. I feel like there might be a generational gap that we start to see. But for the most part, I think that these videos that go viral, they tell a story. So let's look at some of these stories as it relates to the stats.
This is the most humbled I've ever felt in my life. I'm literally folding resumes, a stack of them, so that I can go in person to places and say, are you guys hiring? I'm literally applying for like minimum wage jobs. This is not what I expected. I graduated college with 2 degrees. I speak 3 languages. Oh, this sucks. Like, I literally need to make money. So I'm just gonna keep trying.
I really felt that. 25.7 million views on this. Lil Handy, she's been searching for a job and keeping her followers in the know. The whole world is trying to help her find a job right now. 3.4% application to interview ratio in 2024. What that means is that it is extremely hard to find a job right now. For any of you in recruiting right now, you feel it, don't you? You're going through it. When you look at this, like pre-pandemic, it used to be a 22%. So you could submit 100, 200 resumes, get about 10 to 12 interviews, and land a job within 6 weeks to a few months. Today, you have to submit 600 to 800 resumes, even just to get noticed. And a lot of people are frustrated because these resumes are perfect right now. We're using AI. And so it's like, we use AI to make the job description, and then we use AI to make sure that the perfectly matches the job description. And now nobody knows what they're even talking about, right? It's this very interesting time where top talent is trying to find a path. And it's interesting too, when you look at, the layoffs that are happening. We have a lot of people right now out of a job, and they're competing with the people that got laid off at Meta, the people that got laid off at Google. The talent pool is full of overeducated, which I hate that term, overeducated individuals, over-talented people. There's just not enough jobs. And then it's hard for me to look at the job, the reports that come out and say, we added 300,000 jobs last month. So we're okay, right? Saw that in my feed, tucked that away, everything's fine. But when you really start to look at the experience of the individual, it starts to change. Here's another one for us. Andrew, can we turn the volume up a little, if possible?
Yeah.
What's changed?
Well, yes, in 2020 was the second year in a row I didn't get a raise, even though I was the top employee. And when I asked why I couldn't get a raise, you said it was because my pay was a fair market value for my position. And when I asked for my pay fall on the pay grade scale, you said it was below the median, so below the average of what I could make in my position. So at that point, I just decided I'm going to become a fair market value employee and put in a below average amount of effort, because that's what I feel like you pay me to do. You've created an environment where there's no incentive for me to work hard, so I don't.
Ooh. Is he right? No, tell me right now. Is he right or no? Be honest. Anyone think he's wrong? I want to be honest with me. I don't care. A bunch of HR people, huh? You're willing to rock the boat at all times unless the spotlight comes on you. 46% of employees are working to their contractual obligations only. It's called quiet quitting. I don't know if you've heard of this term, but quiet quitting is essentially employees are burned out. They're tired. They understand that hey, we just fired 3 guys. We're not backfilling them. So you now have to take their responsibilities. Do I get a raise? Absolutely not. And now they're like, well, I'm not going to swear up here. Forget you. Why would they go above and beyond for a company that has skipped their bonuses for how many years? Chris drinks lemonade only has one choice, and that is to, and the thing that's interesting, I think, is that TikTok gives us a little bit of power, right? That employee power is reclaimed when we share our experiences and they get 19 million views and we say, hey, it's not just me anymore. I'm not going to put up with it anymore. Let's look at another one here.
I can't work anymore because I'm working every day very hard, and I never had money. Everything is expensive, mother. So I don't know a la chingada por qué.
I apologize. I bleeped out the English. I forgot the Spanish, and we're in New Mexico, so I apologize for that. This is a little bit of an older video, but 19 million views because people are feeling that. I'm working so hard and I don't even have any money. How many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now? Have you seen that stat? How much? Do you know? What is it? It's like half. Half of Americans right now can't afford $1,000 medical emergency.
Can somebody explain to me in crayon eating terms why I make over 3 times the federal minimum wage and I cannot afford to live? And I do not want to hear the pull yourself up from your bootstraps, work 90 hours a week. That's not the goal, guys. That should not be our standard. When my parents were my age, they both made less than half of what I make, and they lived alone. I cannot afford to live anywhere alone. It is embarrassing to come out and say that it is a struggle to survive right now.
I want to point out that I understand this is an individual experience. Where's the hard data, right? Sometimes if you listen to the presentation yesterday, those of you in the blue quadrant, right? You're like, I want the data, show me the data. But I think this is pretty interesting data, right? He's sharing his experience. I don't think he wanted to make that video. I don't think he wants to tell the world, I cannot afford to live. And other people are resonating with that. I want you to just take a second to think about your workforce. Are they feeling these same things, or is this just happening in an echo chamber? Is this just a Gen Z, a Gen Alpha problem right now? Or are your employees kind of feeling the same struggles? Let's listen to one more. This is Freddie here. He is making waves.
There's no incentive anymore. At least 30 years ago, the incentive was you could work 40 hours for 40 years, afford a home, afford a living, have retirement, and have hope. You took those incentives away from the younger generations. You want them to work 40 hours a week for 50 years without being able to buy a home, with living paycheck to paycheck, working 40 hours? You want them to work 40 hours in corporate America plus commute and then drive Uber on the weekends just to afford groceries? Corporate America needs to change their incentive. Where's the 4-day work week? Where's the more than 12-day PTO? Where's the 9 to 3 job with the same pay instead of 8 to 5:30? You need to change the incentive. You have corporate America bragging about corporate profits at an all-time high, and yet middle-class people can't buy a house and get by and putting groceries on credit cards.
Is he right? No, I want to hear it for real, because when I played that clip, I was like, this is maybe an older audience who's like, I don't get why he's so angry right now. You might not be feeling those same pains as him. Do you feel like he's right or not? Let's be honest. Do you have people in your workforce who want to retire, but they can't? I can't hear you on this side of the room. Come on, am I deaf over here? All right, yeah. I think this is pretty dang conservative, 56%. The average, like to live comfortably right now on a single person's income is $98,000. For a family of four, $209,000. I've got 3 kids. I put them in daycare for like a month and I'm like, I'm done with that because it's like twice a mortgage. It is incredible how expensive everything is getting. And so if you feel like there is an uptick in complaints at your organization, if you feel like there's a lot happening right now, it's because it is. Again, this is conservative, right? Because if you look at like 10 people, 9 of them are making $50,000 a year. 1 of them is making $500,000 a year. You take the average, it's like, oh, average people are making $90,000 a year. And there's that pay discrepancy, right? So when you look at the stats and you really look at them, you're like, I'd like to take those stats and look at it across all generations, across all data points. Again, I'm just showing you a snapshot, but it's just painting a picture about how workers feel in the workplace right now. Sherm, our employees are not happy. They are not happy. Does anyone want to fight me on that? I'm just curious, like, do you think that's true or not? Are you guys going to make me prove this? Raise your hand. Do you think employees, for the majority, are unhappy right now? I just need to see this. And I get it. There's a portion of your workforce that is happy, and you probably spend a lot of time with them because they make you feel better than the other people, right? But the workforce is unhappy. Let's just do some lightning stats just to prove it, right? Here we go. U.S. engagement hits an 11-year low. This is Gallup, right? They've been tracking employee engagement forever. It's at 30% with 17 actively disengaged. The lowest it's been in 11 years. You remember the pandemic, how crappy that was? Well, guess what? Workers are having it worse right now. They are worse off right now than they were. Younger workers feeling greater drop in engagement than other generations. They're falling off, and we can be like, oh, it's the anti-work movement. They're just lazy. They don't want to work. Why would they want to work for you if they can't even afford a living? They can't even move out of mom and dad's basement. Americans are unhappier at work than they've been in years. You probably can't see this red line just completely tanking. These scores experienced a 10% drop this year alone. 1 in 2 U.S. employees are open to leaving their organizations. They're actively looking for a job. They would take another job if it were available. So my question is, where the hell did employee experience design go? The economy gets hard, and then we just get back to this dynamic of, well, you're just an employee, and we need to do what's right by the organization. Sorry, it's just not the right time for us to care about you. What message are we sending? This is trust. How much trust employees have in their employers. Right now, there's all-time low trust in our government. There's an all-time low trust in corporations. We just have so little trust. And this is interesting too, right? This is from HBR. You see the difference between men and women. And isn't it interesting that women all the way up to director level are like, And then once they finally become a senior leader, they start to have a little bit more trust. I think it's because they've got a little bit of power to do something about it. That's why I applaud those of you in this room who are working hard to make sure that there's trust. That's why I applaud people like Claude, who gets up here and gives an amazing presentation. Wasn't she incredible? I see her and I'm like, I want that for all women. I want that for everyone. And we're just dealing with some systemic problems right now. Employees are unhappy. And it's not just a nice to have, you guys. This is affecting the bottom line in every organization. If 79% of employees are disengaged, that comes out to be around, 34%. It costs 34% of an employee's annual salary, which means we are losing $7.8 trillion in global lost productivity. That number is so big, it's hard to wrap your mind around it. So let's make it personal. Just let's do some simple math, right? How many people in your organization, how many employees do you have? Well, 79% of them are apparently disengaged. So take that 79. How much is 34% of their salary? That's your number. That adds up to millions and millions of dollars in lost productivity at the organization. And I feel like maybe during the pandemic, it was a little bit of an easier sell, right? It's like, our people aren't happy, so let's do these things. And we've been talking a little bit about how like, we finally have a seat at the table, whatever that means, right? But are we really focusing on employee engagement, the employee experience? And so this is where I get pretty passionate. So me and my co-author are finishing up the manuscript of the book that we're going to be publishing in January. It's called Employment is Dead. Great title for a bunch of SHRM people, right? Employment is Dead. It's going to be published with Harvard Business Review Press. We're really excited about it. Deborah Parrish-Piccioni is amazing. This will be her 5th book. She's a New York Times bestselling author. I want to kind of give you the story of where the book came from. So I left school. I started consulting in an HR agency, and I was drinking the Kool-Aid. This was amazing. We were like working with organizations who truly cared about their people. They were working to bolster them up, do the employee experience design, move past just having ping pong tables in the break room and really trying to understand how are employees feeling, running some analytics around that, trying to implement some of the feedback that they receive. And there was a moment for me, I'm just curious if you feel this with me, and maybe not. There was a moment where I was like, oh, corporations just don't care enough about their employees. It feels like a systemic problem. It feels like capitalism, especially late stage capitalism, is kind of designed for shareholders, right? It's designed to make a few people at the top really rich at the expense, more often than not, of the employees on the front line. And I started to see it. And you probably see it and you probably feel it, right? When you're working with an executive or when you talk to a CFO and you start to kind of paint the picture of like, well, this is what our workforce is feeling and here's what HR should do. And they sweep you away a little bit, maybe a lot of it. That's real. It's a systemic problem. And so I came to the realization that I don't think organizations either care enough about the employee experience or they can't move fast enough to really give employees what they need. The modern workforce is demanding more out of us. Can we give it to them? Or are we going to just RTO because that's what we're supposed to do? That's what I want. We want whatever reason, right? I don't want to touch too much on this, but I'm simply highlighting that traditional work structures are outdated. They are not serving our workforce. They aren't serving you, and they most certainly are not serving traditional organizations. Think about, traditional work as it stands today, this 9-to-5 task-based work. That was designed at a time where we needed one person to sit in one chair, monitor their hours, monitor how much of one task they do, and move on. We live in the age of information, though. Things move so much faster than that. And these companies that can't keep up because they're not innovative enough, they're not creative enough, they're falling by the wayside. And then they start to ask, where did all the top talent go? Why can't we find them? And you start to ask the hard questions. It's like, well, is it us? Is there something we can do? Or is it the structure of work? So the big theme of the book is modern day corporate structures need to evolve. And they need to evolve fast. Because imagine the employee who is disgruntled. They're mad. They don't want to be here. And what do? Their options are, I'm going to jump to another job. And they find another culture that's just as bad. And they jump from job to job to job, or they play the game a little bit. What happens, though, when they find something better? Maybe working as a core contributor for a DAO, or working as a freelancer in the global talent marketplace, which we'll talk about in just a second. That leap is pretty big. And the minute that our employees start leaving for better work environments that don't have the same corporate structure, the centralized hierarchy, that's the minute we're going to panic. So all I'm doing right now, I want to hold a flag and say, hey, things are coming. We should be aware of them. And so I'm going to talk about a few of these technologies. I want to see how they land with you. But I want to set some expectations right now. SHRM, I love you. I think the work that you do is the hardest and most important work in corporate America today. I'm not here for you, though. I'm here for your employees. I want them to have a better experience. I hope you came to this conference for them too. And to have a little bit of fun. I get it. Like in the trenches, it's so hard, especially those teams of one, you feel like you're doing it all by yourself. When you come to this conference, let's let our hair down. Let's have some fun. But remember, we're not here for us. Some of you might be here for the company. I'm not here for any of that. I'm here for your employees. I want to make their experience better. So as we look at this book, as we look at these 10 principles, the 10 operating principles of Work 3, of decentralization, I want you to ask yourself, can our organization deliver some of these needs that employees might have? So the whole concept of Work 3, I am co-founder of the Work 3 Institute. What we're trying to do is we want to help marry emerging technologies, whatever form that takes, with workforce strategies. How can we leverage these technologies to be more human at work, to provide better experiences for our employees? I am Josh Drean. I am, as you mentioned, the co-founder of the Work 3 Institute. What we do there is we marry emerging technologies with workforce strategies. So if you have a workforce, if you are interested in empowering them, you usually come to us to talk about emerging technologies like AI, like Web3, decentralization, you name it. We're on the bleeding edge of some of these technologies and how it's reshaping work. We wrote the book called Employment is Dead, which is our flag in the sand. Essentially, we are saying that traditional models of employment no longer serve us. They were designed at a time when we didn't have modern technology, when we needed tasks done well and succinctly, and now we need to leverage the whole human, and there are very little outlets in order to make that work through these traditional work models. So the Work 3 Institute is very much that. It's Work 3, it's Web 3, it's the next iteration. I also live in Minneapolis, Minnesota with my 3 kids and my lovely wife, and we were just talking about how quickly it gets cold here, so enjoying those last days of summer. Yeah, that's a great starting point. So I was a student at Harvard and I was building a startup out of the Harvard Innovation Labs. I was leveraging the resources of their incubation program, which essentially the idea is to help young students, the next Mark Zuckerbergs, if you will, go further faster. And we were tackling the employee engagement industry head on. We looked at employee engagement surveys and they never really made sense to me. They were long. They were done once a year, which was, a small snapshot of how your employees are actually feeling. We weren't doing anything with the data, collect the numbers. We would never move them into actionable insights, which can really hurt your company's culture and the trust of employees. So we took a younger approach to it. We pioneered sentiment analysis in real time. That's a fancy way of saying that the younger generation is used to immediate feedback all day, every day through social media. So if we can get closer to collecting that feedback in an organic way that highlights the relationship, that we can build better cultures, we can build more trust, and we can see those engagement numbers rise, because engagement today especially is just completely in the toilet. Gallup just posted their worst numbers in 11 years. Disengagement is an all-time high right now. And that's including the pandemic, which blows my mind.
Right.
We're an unhappy workforce. And that's where I stay rooted, is that employee experience design. How do we design experiences that employees want to have that meets their needs? And again, we're just a startup. I swung out and started doing HR consulting with a consulting boutique, a little small outfit, but we were working with large organizations like McDonald's and Cargill through the pandemic, of how do they help their frontline employees stay? How do they stay happy? And there was just a moment, and I remember it vividly. I was just sitting there thinking about all the work that needs to go into designing a better experience. And it was like, I realized that companies either, one, don't want to or don't care about employee experience design, basically because that's how the system has been set. They care about it, but they can't do it well enough or fast enough to meet the needs of the emerging workforce. And so you get to this place where employees are unhappy. They definitely are not finding happiness in their job, and corporations are starting to favor shareholder experience, especially as you see the economy turn, right? It's all about shareholder experience, not employee experience. Employee experience design takes a backseat. Long story short, So many companies have showed us that they just don't even care about the workers that work for them, or they don't understand why they should care. And so you get
Yeah.
stuck, then why should they work for you? The foundation of the book essentially is you can't offer employees what we call the 10 operating principles of work 3, which is ownership over their work, which is flexibility in their work schedules, autonomy to make decisions based on what they're seeing on the front lines. If we can't offer that to them, why should they work for us? And right now the answer is because they need money and, and the economy doesn't look good.
Yeah.
What happens when Great Resignation 2.0 is upon us? It's
Yeah.
not going to be pretty. When you look back, let's look back 20, 30 years. The idea was, hey, you go to college, learn some skills, come work for us. We will take care of you for 30, 40, 50 years. We'll pay you great. We'll let you retire with great pension. And then you can go off and explore and do all of the things that you've wanted to do. And we're seeing that model completely fracture from the start to the finish. You look at kids coming out of college, right? They are $100,000 in debt trying to pay for school where they thought they would be guaranteed a job. It's no longer the case. You look at their parents who can't retire because the system just hasn't worked for them well enough for them to feel comfortable retiring and being able to pay for all the expenses in their life. So you have the boomers hanging on longer than ever before. You have an emerging workforce that we are completely unprepared for, and companies don't know what to do. They don't know why the promises are broken, and they don't know how to fix it. And so fundamentally, I just want to look at maybe 3 layers here, right?
Yeah.
The bottom layer is, I don't care about employee experience design. This is a business. Leave your emotions at home. Old school employment. That's where a lot of companies still are today. And they wonder why there's this disengagement epidemic. It's because you've created not a relationship. It's transactional. It's a contract. Layer up is like, oh, maybe we do need to have a little bit of a relationship with our people. So let's do some employee engagement initiatives. Let's get a ping pong table, put some toys in the workplace, or give them snacks in the break room. And those are superficial, okay, nice bell and whistle. But what I really need, if you're interested company, and they say, nope, don't go there. And then the third layer up is, yes, employee engagement. We want to hear you. We have a continuous listening strategy. We're doing employee engagement surveys. Talk to us. And what we're seeing on this level is employees actually being honest, actually talking about how they're feeling. And they either get labeled as detractors, oh, they just don't care. Or the company says, we actually can't meet your needs because what you're asking for is outside the scope of a 9-to-5 corporate job. And if we're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you can't see this in the podcast. I'm like making a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid is like, all right, I'm going to do right by me as an employee. That's the only choice that I have, which is run off and go be a freelancer or a contractor in some way. But then you start to lose some of the stability of kind of work model. And so what we do at the Work 3 Institute is we help transition, right? Hey, if they can't meet your needs, here's a Web3 model of work that actually gives you the stability that you want and need, gives you the ownership over the projects and the value you generate, gives you the flexibility to work when and how and where you want. These are things that employees actually want. If we can't give it to them, they're not going to just jump from job to job. They're going to jump to a Web3 model of work where employment doesn't even exist. It's dead, if you will.
Right.
Because I believe in employee experience design. I believe in listening to employees. And if you're not willing to do an employee engagement survey and share those results and publish them for the organization, then let's just go to TikTok and listen to them complain about it. Because guess what? They're going viral they're going viral. And they're not alone. And so there's a story about Amanda specifically who was doing her job. She's stereotypically in a job that doesn't favor women, right? She's a construction worker. She's a grader. And so an old couple approached her and gave her kind of this backhanded comment where they said, wow, I can't believe they let women do this job now. And her response was, are you shocked when you see a woman doctor or a woman firefighter? I can do the job. I've been doing it for years. It's no big deal. So why is there this stereotype? And dig into some of the research there a little bit. Like, how often do we blame women for some of these economic workforce problems, which I think is just so ridiculous. There's not enough women working, or there's too many women working, or they just have babies and we have to give them maternity leave, which cuts into our, like, all of the stereotypes. There are designed specifically to help women in the workforce have all their needs met, especially when, and that's construction. You look at roles where they might be much more qualified to take the reins on jobs that are held by
100%.
men who are underqualified, who don't have the skills and capabilities that they need, and yet there's still a glass ceiling for women. There's still a lot of issues there. So it's highlighting Amanda's experience to tell that story and share that.